coming out to Oblong Books tonight. Very excited to have you here. Excellent event. But before we get to that, a couple of housekeeping things first. Please take a moment to turn off or silence your cell phones. It's always lovely to be here in person. And in the event that you don't catch us, or somebody wanted to be here and they missed it, we're lucky to have Panda TV here filming the whole thing, so it'll be available on public access if you want to rewatch this fabulous event this evening. In the event of emergency, there are exits at the front and the back of the store. In the event of a separate emergency, our bathroom is located right over there. This is not the only event that we have going on. In fact, we have a whole host of fabulous events. In just 2 days, on July 24th, back here at 6 p.m., we're going to have Betty Chimay here with her book Too Soon in conjunction with New York Stage and Film. Very excited for that one. And then, of course, I'd be very much remiss if I did not mention that this is Oblong Books' 50th anniversary, 50 years of being in business. To celebrate, as is correct, we're throwing a big party coming up on August 9th in Millerton. We have shut down a street to have a huge book block party there. It's 11 to 4 p.m. Come on down. There'll be fun, food, games for the whole family, and of course, there'll be a few books as well. I think that's enough hemming and hawing. Shall we get on to the main event? First up, our lovely co-host and speaker this evening. She's a writer, editor, and agent at Triangle House Literary. She's also worked at Alfred A. Knopf, Doubleday, Echo, and Flatiron Books. She currently lives in the Hudson Valley. Please give it up for Miss Emma Trees. And sitting in the other chair, we have the lovely and wonderful. She's an editor for Dwell, wrote for Jezebel, New York Times, and Elle, just to name a few of the many periodicals. She was the co-host of the Dirtcast and is about to tell us all about, like, the most hated word in, like, the English language. Please join me in welcoming Miss Megan C. Reynolds.
Okay. Hi. I guess to start, I will read you just one small excerpt from this book, which you should all buy after. Thank you. This is about dictionaries, which is relevant to the book, in case you weren't sure. All right. If you ever find yourself stuck in a library out of necessity rather than intent, a nice way to kill 15 minutes is to sit down with a dictionary. Yes, the phone you idly tap on and swipe through every minute of the day also has a dictionary. And sure, you could do whatever I'm about to suggest on your phone in 2 seconds, but stick with me. What the dictionary offers that your dumb little phone doesn't is a sense of discovery. Maybe you harbor suspicions that the idiot you went on a date with 2 days ago who kept using limb as a verb was using it incorrectly. And because this has been bothering you almost nonstop ever since, even though you have no intention of seeing this person again, you are consumed with the desire to prove him wrong. So off to the dictionary you go, and lo, he's right. It is technically correct to say that his half-written novel limbs the despair of its protagonist's rich inner life as he grapples with heterosexuality and a looming midlife crisis. According to Webster's New World College Dictionary, 5th edition, limn is an acceptable verb for the act of description. And while there's nothing specifically in this dictionary or any other that says this is an irrefutably pretentious way to describe a half-written novel that's trying to do Philip Roth but worse, it's implied. This man is a bore, and your ick is valid. Hear me out. You often find yourselves in situations where you need to prove that what you're saying is correct, or ideally, that what they're saying is wrong, then being definitionally right matters. And while debating the meanings of words is a fun thing to do at cocktail parties, dictionaries exist for a reason. They're a set of agreed-upon definitions for words and general instructions for how to use them. A dictionary is a living document, always one step behind the time new editions are published. There's no such thing as a real-time dictionary because language moves faster than we're able to document. Volumes of the past are like snapshots of those moments in time, useful resources for seeing how far we've come. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of dictionaries out there, from the most general to the hyper-specific. Urban Dictionary, a long-standing website with user-submitted words and meanings, sets out to define slang written by the audience it's intended for, teenagers. The Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows, a Tumblr-turned-book by John Koenig, is one such dictionary that celebrates the lesser-known words whose meanings are so hyper-specific and romantic in a sense that it'd be difficult to use them in everyday speech. There are dictionaries for English idioms geared towards English as a second language students who have grasped the basics of spoken English, but don't understand why someone that says, say, cleaning their gutters is a piece of cake, when the actual activity described is anything but. But the two big boys in the dictionary landscape are arguably Merriam-Webster and Oxford English, two volumes that work in complement with each other. The difference between the two is subtle but very important. A 2018 post in the Columbia Journalism Review clarifies the distinction. Merriam-Webster is synchronic, which means it is a record of how words are used now and focuses on active vocabulary. The OED is diachronic, which means it's historical. Both dictionaries are updated and evolve, but Merriam-Webster refreshes more frequently as it scrambles to keep pace with the breakneck speed language moves at today. Put it this way, if a word's meaning changes significantly because of, I don't know, a TikTok, the slang definition of that word will show up in Merriam-Webster before it does in the OED. Like, in its slang usage, shows up in the 5th edition of Merriam-Webster's Doorstopper. A heartening bit of news if you care about language, or frankly, even if you don't. It's like hot is the example provided, a sentence that I hear in my head, and one that I say out loud quite often, maybe too much, but usually is the opening line to my colleagues as we stare at each other in silence before meetings start. How validating. Inserted into spoken sentences before or after a word, phrase, or clause, apparently without meaning or syntactic function, but possibly for emphasis, is how Merriam-Webster says like is defined in the slang. And what's beautiful about this definition is the potential for more. Possibly for emphasis leaves some room for interpretation, for growth. Right now, we're used to people throwing in a like when they deem it necessary, but who knows what the future holds. Dictionaries are about precision, and even though most of the general public thinks that dictionaries are infallible or some sort of final word, let's think about who makes that dusty volume of Merriam-Webster. In her book, Word by Word, The Secret Life of Dictionaries, former Merriam-Webster Associate Editor Corey Stamper provides an engaging and comprehensive account of the Sisyphean task of assembling a dictionary. A dictionary is out of date the minute that it's done, she writes. There are only 2 hard and fast requirements for a hopeful dictionary editor, Stamper writes, and they are relatively minor. Any native English speaker with a degree from a 4-year university can apply. And because the dictionary is written by people with different life experiences and backgrounds, part of the training process involves learning how to set aside personal prejudices in the name of pure objectivity. When us normies think about words, and more irritatingly, grammar, as good or bad or correct, all we're really doing is thinking about the twisting and occasionally arcane rules that we've all been taught that maybe make us feel bad. Grammar generally creates and disobeys its own rules, then rewrites them, only to do it all over again. This sort of grace and flexibility is because of how these rules came about in the first place. They're just the preferences of the people who are allowed to write the dictionaries of the past, and for some demented reason, we've all sat back and collectively agreed that this is a totally fine way to live. In other words, a dictionary is not prescriptivist, as so many grammarians and general sticks in the mud often are. It's a descriptivist document. A lexicographer's job is to tell the truth about how language is used, Stamper writes. Lexicographers and linguists share the same impulses, to know as much as they can about language and to help categorize but also facilitate its evolution. Like, as an entry in the dictionary in all its forms, essentially signals mainstream acceptance and signals to the young lexicographers of the future to make space for the possibility of change.
That was fabulous.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. How are you?
Really good.
Great.
Right.
Amazing. Happy to be here in the town of your youth.
Thank you so much for acknowledging the town of my youth.
We took a little walk through Rhinebeck before we got to, and Megan was just really like pointing out to me the whole like what things used to be, like what things once were, and I think that's really relatable in anyone's hometown.
Thank you.
So I love this book, not least of which is because I think as a child growing up in the 90s and aughts, or whenever, I was lambasted for my use of like constantly.
I'm so sorry.
And I think it's very validating to have a whole book written about how it's a valid word that we use in conversation.
It is.
And I would love to hear you talk a little bit about the history of the word, which I know is sort of interesting and also, you might argue, sort of not.
That's
a little bit of a tease.
That's absolutely correct, Anna. Thank you. So like as a word has been around for a really long time. It did not start with the Valley Girls, which is what everybody thinks. It started, I don't know where it actually started, but there are records of it going back to the 1600s in court documents in the UK, of the word being used very much in the same way that we use it today. And I think part of the reason that it's spread so profusely is because of colonialism, right? So the British ruled all of the world for all this time, blah, blah, blah. The way that they spoke became a way that, the colonies spoke in the same way that they do. So it's pervasive, it's been around for a long time, and it's not nearly as new as we think it is, much like almost everything else.
You mean, like the British are coming?
Yeah, correct, yes, absolutely. I feel confident that was, yes, Paul Revere most likely said that. I wasn't there, but I can only assume. That is also, those are also correct uses.
And so that is obviously interesting. I mean, we love to blame everything on colonialism. Because it famously did everything wrong. But you actually won't find a ton of history predating like the 1980s in this book itself.
That is correct.
And can you talk a little bit about maybe why that is?
Sure. Because not that I don't think history is interesting, because it is. However, I do think that maybe the more interesting thing to think about is why it's persisting. Why this thing, like, we don't need to know about the history. We know enough. I've told you enough, and there's slightly more in here. But I think learning about why it persists and why we're still using it is a more forward-thinking way. I think that's a more valuable way of thinking in general, and it also allows us to entertain the possibility of change, which I think everybody should be doing. And if you're not, that's your problem. But you should be thinking about change, possibility, potential.
Yeah. I mean, something I really love about your book, and actually Corey Stamper's book, which I worked on many years ago, is you both have like an incredibly, I mean, you guys like have to read this book because it is very, very funny. And you have this like real, like kind of like irreverent sense of humor, and are also really obviously incredibly smart about language. And I think something that your book does really well is it really does kind of like live in the present and live in how usage works and how it impacts our daily lives and how we relate to other people. And obviously we can get into like the gendered aspects of it all and all of that, but it is something that is just like lively and present in our life. Language is not, unless you're talking about Latin, as you mentioned, or a couple other languages, it's not dead. It's like a living, breathing thing that adapts to how we use it.
Yes. The way that I'm speaking today changes, is going to be different from the way I'm speaking tomorrow, or the way I spoke yesterday, or what I said to you like an hour ago.
So true.
At my dad's house.
Remember that.
So, I mean, I certainly can. So yeah, language changes. It is changing as we are sitting here not talking. And I think that is a much more interesting thing to think about than sort of combing through the pages of history. Because we can learn some stuff, but I think we learn much more by doing and being active and whatever else.
And there was an academic book written about this, right?
There was
history.
Yes, there was actually a very well-written, researched academic book written about this word, and that is not this one.
And you actually don't have to read that book because this is a more I mean, I love academics, but I'm just saying this is probably more entertaining,
Yes. It is.
Anyway, so I would actually love to hear you talk a little bit about process, because this book actually has kind of an interesting origin story, how it came to be.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, that is maybe a little untraditional or non-traditional compared to how some books of nonfiction or fiction come to be. So can you talk about that a little?
Yes. So this book came to me from my brilliant and lovely editor. It was not a subject that I was uninterested in, obviously, because I would not have written the book if I wasn't interested in it. But I think because I treated it sort of as an assignment, sort of how I have with lots of other things in my career as a writer and editor, that gave me a little more freedom to sort of really get out of my own way and not be so caught up in, not caught up in the fact that it was, not caught up in the fact that it was like my idea or whatever else, but just sort of literally just to get out of my own way. I had an assignment, I was fulfilling the assignment, and I could also fulfill the assignment however I wanted to. And so that, taking that approach, I think was really freeing, because I was making up the rules sort of as I went along, because my book, because I wrote it.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
She did.
I did, thanks.
Okay, let's talk about the word a little bit.
Sure.
The word itself.
Love to talk about words.
Because in the book you identify, it's very impressive. She identifies 5 ways that the word is used in conversation, in the way that it's often critiqued for being used. Not saying, I like the trees, or I
Those
like
are fine.
wine. That's,
Say that if you want to.
Well, the other ways are fine too.
The other ways are fine,
Yeah,
but those
as
ways that
would
Emma
argue.
just elucidated are like generally fine.
Generally accepted socially.
Yes.
There are 5 ways that maybe it's not as socially accepted.
That is correct.
And it's a lot of what the book is kind of the defense of. And we won't talk about all of them because
Thank
you
you.
should read the book.
Yes, that's right.
But can you talk a little bit about maybe like 1 or 2 of your favorite
I would
usages
love to.
of
Yes. So my personal favorite usage is like as the quotative. And if nobody knows what that means, that's fine, and I will tell you. The quotative is when you say, I was like, this is terrible, for example. That it replaces said in a sentence. So I could say, I said this was terrible, or I could say this was like, or I was like, this is terrible. And the difference is that like gives you the opportunity to reveal a little bit about how whatever it was that was said or that you said made you feel, instead of what actually happened. So it's not, I suppose if you were in like a police interrogation or sort of a meeting with HR or some sort of other very serious situation in which
On the same level, HR.
HR, police interrogation, honestly, listen. Sometimes they are.
Yeah,
Emma.
so true.
Sometimes they
So
are.
true.
But those are situations in which you require precision. The police officer or the HR professional would like to know exactly what happened, how it happened, and what was actually said. Ideally, they can glean from that information how you felt about it, but that's not necessarily their aim. But if you're telling a story to a friend about how someone said something that made you feel bad or good or whatever else, and you say, I was like, this is amazing, this is terrible, this is whatever, it's not, the importance of what actually was said is not really at play. Like, that doesn't matter. What you're saying is, this is how I felt about it, and you're also telling that other person that this is how I felt about it, and that I think is good for, I think that's good for healthy communication. I think it's good for connection, and I think it's good for, I don't know, it's just a nice way to talk. Like, no one wants to be, why are we having a conversation where you're speaking as if you're reading from a script, Like, say how things made you feel without actually saying, this made me feel this way, because that is scarier, personally, than saying, like, this made me feel, So that's why, that's my favorite, because I think it makes storytelling more interesting. I think it makes friendship and other relationships more interesting, and it's very useful. So that's my first favorite. And I guess my second favorite is when you can use like to approximate value. And that is good for, again, storytelling and communication, because it allows for hyperbole. And I think that almost every conversation should have a dash of hyperbole for it to be interesting. And so, that's saying, I have like 9 million things to do today before I go to this thing, for example. I did not have 9 million things to do today. I had maybe like 5. And that is actually probably close to the truth. But if I say I had like 9 million things to do today, I assume you all assume that I felt a little stressed about all of those things that I had to do, even though it was probably, like I said, literally probably just 5 things. And I think that's useful too, because again, all this is doing is just giving little pings of information about feeling, instead of saying directly, I felt bad, I felt this, I felt that, because that, again, immensely difficult to say succinctly or clearly.
You could also argue it's more concise to use like in that case, because
Well,
you don't have to say I had 5 things to do today and it really stressed me out. You could just say I had like a million things
That's
to do
true,
today.
and everyone will understand. You were stressed out, and that's great. Now you're not.
Exactly.
Hopefully.
cool.
Yeah.
And something that's also, I think, cool about the quotative is that's the first one you talked about, right?
That is right.
Is it allows for kind of acknowledging the fallibility of memory, right? This
Yes.
idea that anyone, when you're storytelling, is not ever going to be telling revealing the true actual
Correct.
fact
Yes.
of what happened, in the way that when you read a memoir, you're not expecting that everything in the memoir happened exactly as it was said.
Right. Yeah.
It's just like an incredibly elastic word.
It sure is elastic enough for this whole book. No, it is, and that's why I think when people are upset about its improper use, that they are just being kind of pain in the butt for no reason. It's about, it seems like being proper for propriety's sake, and why bother? Why are we wasting our time with that when we could be listening to what the other person is saying, because there is a good chance that it's important. So pay attention to the content of the speech as opposed to, I guess, like the vessel that the speech is, but that the content is in.
The adornments.
The adornments, yes, the embellishments.
Off that, we do have to discuss the gendered aspect of all of this,
I suppose.
because
We must we? Yeah.
we all know that we haven't been policing men for saying like for years.
I mean,
Some do, obviously.
Sure.
Um,
Yes.
Something that I actually think is more interesting than talking about why people police women using this word, which is, we just know to be true. We'll talk about all the time.
Yeah.
It's the way we talk about, up talk and
Vocal fry,
all of that.
yeah.
We've heard it a million times. Is you write really interestingly about why women use it and why it seems to populate women's vocabulary more than it does men's. And I would love to hear you talk about that.
Well, okay. It is generally, because of all the stuff I've just said about emotions and feelings and being accommodating to your own feelings and other people's feelings, women, this should not be a surprise to anybody in this room, and if it is, you can speak to me about this afterwards.
Don't invite that.
Please, actually, I'm not in the middle. I not want to talk to you about this afterwards. Is because women do a lot of caretaking emotionally and otherwise, and so, if you're saying like a lot in a conversation, it's probably, I'm not going to make any assumptions about anybody, whatever, but there is a chance that it is because you are trying to be accommodating to the other person. You are taking your time so that you can show that you're being considerate. You are taking time so that the other person can see that you're thinking about stuff or figuring out what you're going to say, but it also sort of softens the blow of like a tough or uncomfortable conversation. So, an example that I write about in the book that I think about often is you see it a lot in reality TV, like specifically dating reality TV, like The Bachelor, Love Island, any of these other shows where there are a bunch of young people thrown together in a situation where they're expected to find something akin to love or a connection, usually for the grand prize of money, like weird sort of B tier, like Instagram fame, and then somewhere on that list, love. So these people are thrown into these situations, they have to try to forge these connections, but the problem is everyone is unsure about what's going on. And so anytime they're having these really long, intense conversations about, it's Andrea. Anytime they're having these long conversations about, this is how I feel about you, or this is how I feel about the situation, no one is ever direct because no one actually knows how they feel, but everybody knows that the way that they need to communicate how they need to make it seem like they actually care. And so, gives you a little space to sort of be hesitant. It lets the other person know that you're thinking, but also, as a woman, if you're saying it a lot, it means that you are sort of softening the blow of whatever it is you're saying to the other person. And that is something I think that a lot of women do, obviously without even thinking about it. But if you do think about it for just a little bit, you will say, interesting. Weird, okay.
Doing it unconsciously most of the time.
That is correct.
Yeah. Until you really start thinking about it because someone is saying, you say like,
Yeah,
constantly.
and then you feel really bad about yourself for no reason.
Yeah, It's brutal.
Life is hard. Life is rough.
really rough, as
Truly
a woman
difficult.
saying all the time. Okay, so you actually mentioned in the book that when you were growing up, you never actually got given a ton of shit for saying thanks to your father. As in, he didn't give you.
You did
shit
not.
For it. Am I allowed to curse on public?
I think so.
access? 'Cause I have been.
I have been too, though Jenny said not to.
Oh,
Jenny, my sister,
Okay, yeah.
no one here.
But I'm curious if actually in the process of researching the book or in talking about
Mhm.
it or since publishing it,
Yeah.
if you've gotten pushback and arguments about the value of the word and whether that any of that has been interesting or just infuriating in writing the book.
No one has had the temerity to say to me that I say too much, and I again dare them to try. I have not stopped saying the word less, because after writing this book, if anything, I've doubled down on my insistence of continuing to speak the way that I've spoken the entire 42 years that I've been alive, and I have no issue with that. What has been interesting, though, I did an appearance on WGN Chicago last week, and the host came in real hot at the beginning, and I was not expecting this, and said basically what did he even say on this guy? What did he even say? He was like, why are we telling, why would you be supporting this word? Because there are, young girls everywhere should be getting this out of their vocabulary so they can go have jobs.
Be doctors.
Go be doctors. And I was like, well, sir, okay, I disagree. Respectfully, I disagree. I actually don't remember what I said. I kind of blacked it out. It's a little stressful. So there have been sort of things like that. And I did get, after that appearance, I did get a very long email from a man named Norman Hytree, who said, yeah, don't worry, I'm sad dressed now. No, I got this very long email from a man who was like, why would you be telling people to say this word? It's bad for humanity. I don't know, some other shit. I didn't really read it all. At the end of the email, I read the email, sent it to at least 5 people, and then responded to him and said, would you like a copy of my book?
Because he obviously hadn't read it.
Because he obviously had not read it. He said he had been waiting to watch this WGN segment because apparently it was a very important thing to him. And then he watched it and had a bunch of shit to say, and I said, okay, girl, that's great. Offered to send him a copy of my book. He responded and said, thank you so much, would you sign it? And I said, yes, I was planning on it, Norman. I will get to it this weekend. I'm back in New York. So no, I have not stopped being myself. That's
Perfect, as you shouldn't
I don't
be.
really see that happening anytime soon.
No, I think it's validating, and I also think it's a validating endorsement of the book to think about how you actually maybe use it more. And you've done the research, you've done all the work.
I did.
You validated an opinion that you already had
I
by
did.
actually talking to a ton of people and doing a bunch of reading, and you wrote a book about it.
I did.
And
That's true.
that's more than Norman could say.
Norman, I mean, I hope he's
I mean,
well.
maybe
and
he's written a book, I don't know.
I did some, I Googled, I don't know.
That's okay.
No, he seems fine. I hope he enjoys my book when I send it to him in 1 to 2 weeks.
Yeah.
When I have
So something that I found really interesting about the book, as talk about process and structure again,
passion of
because
mine. Yes,
writers
please.
love to discuss
I
that.
could talk about this until the cows come home.
You actually wrote, you read from what was not one of the regular chapters in the
Correct.
book, but one of the interludes.
Mhm.
So Megan has several interludes
I
throughout the
do.
book that touch on sort of related aspects of culture or language.
Mhm.
You have a really interesting interlude chapter about a similar quote unquote filler word that is used in Mandarin.
Yes.
You have one on women in film,
I
on,
do.
on texting.
How people learn English. I'm simply just
How people learn
Consulting-
English.
consulting
Okay,
you.
what are some other ones?
I don't know. The grammar war. What's even that about?
The grammar course. She's already forgotten.
I have.
It's probably about what began,
That's correct.
I read it more recently than
Thank
have,
you.
probably.
That's right. Yeah.
Anyway, I was actually, as I was reading, I think it's kind of interesting how the use of these interludes kind of punctuating these chapters mirrors a little bit the way that sometimes will punctuate our conversations.
Okay, I wasn't even thinking that.
And I'm curious about whether these interludes were kind of always planned as you were writing the book, or if there was something in your research that kind of necessitated broadening the scope of the book, or
Right.
having these interludes exist as they're kind of standalone
Yeah, yeah.
chapters.
So I think if I can remember, last summer, which I can for the most part. Yeah, I think the first interlude was the one that frankly appears first in the book, which is about the grammar wars, which is, and it's because a lot of the things that are in the interludes, like Emma said, are sort of larger cultural touch points about language and culture. And so it would have been repetitive to put all of that into each chapter because it applied in so many different ways to each chapter. So I thought the easiest and the more fun way for me writing this book to do it was to sort of make them into little sections, because I think that, yeah, I mean, the thing that I read about dictionaries, any bit of that could have gone into any chapter of the book. There's the thing about the word in Mandarin, which I will not say because my Mandarin is very bad, and I would embarrass myself. That could have gone in any section of the book. There's a thing in there about women. Also, all of these are just sort of like themes that run through the book and that run through the discourse around the word. And it just would have been repetitive. Yeah. If I put them in every place they needed to go, because I think while I was writing it, I was trying to, and I was like, oh, I'm either gonna repeat myself, or I should just condense this and be succinct, if at all possible.
Well, it's also hard just because it's so much a part of culture. It touches on so many parts of culture, and each usage exists in so many parts of culture too, right?
Yes,
so I think it's definitely interesting to have and there's also just related things that are like is not the only word in the world,
totally.
Or the only, you talk at the end about literally, which is super interesting. And now I believe the second definition of literally in the dictionary is now figuratively.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. Because because Merriam-Webster, people used literally so much to mean figuratively that then they added a definition, which I think really drove people crazy.
I think so too. I mean, literally is the one I think that, people are angrier about possibly because it does have a meaning. It literally has a meaning. People are using it in a way that does not adhere to said meaning, and I guess when that happens, it breaks a lot of people's brains in a way that I will never understand. But I'm hopeful that everyone can put their brains back together to just accept it and be okay with it.
Yeah.
Like it's just words.
That's how language evolves.
That's right.
It's just words. The alternate title for the book.
It's just some words.
Just a
bunch of words in here.
You do actually though kind of come down on
Oh, interesting.
A little bit, don't you? Do you?
Someone does. It's not me.
It's not
Lindsay.
you.
No, but one of
Lindsay does. Yes.
So
that chapter on podcasting is very interesting.
Yes. So there is.
You gotta read the book.
You must read the book. No. I talked to a couple of my friends who have a very popular podcast, and they edit their own podcast, and I asked them about, do you cut out of your podcast, whatever, and they've generally said no unless it is very disruptive, which they haven't found that it is. But one of my friends, Lindsay Weber, said that is the one sort of filler word that she struggles with, just because it's just not one that she likes. It's not one that works for her. And I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with that's not true. I have problems with lots of things, but around this subject.
Around language,
I don't have a problem with much. I think that however you're going to say something is how you're going to say it, and as long as it is not demonstrably racist, sexist, homophobic, bad, then just say it, please.
Say it. Don't spray it.
Is a word?
I mean, you tell me. Yes?
I'm just giving the person space to think a second. I understand what's going on.
Right. I mean, is essentially, it's a filler word, just like.
I think is in the dictionary.
Is it?
I think and are both there.
I think you can play in Scrabble.
You can.
So yeah.
I know you can. But also, no one uses cat with an X in language, and that's a word in the Scrabble dictionary.
Oh, I didn't know that.
One more question?
Yes. Yeah.
I've not yet read the
That's
book.
okay.
My intention is to read the book. Dave and Diana are friends of mine.
Oh.
It supports you to buy the book.
Oh, great. Hello, fabulous, wonderful.
Do you find that the interludes are like a second story going on at the same time?
That's actually a very good question.
And in other words, I'm breaking the fourth wall. This is a story, but here I am talking to you right now.
Yes and no. I do think that there is a lot of what you've just described as sort of breaking the fourth wall, because one of the things that I did in this book that I think I do in everything that I write is, not to be annoying, but I put myself in it. Because that is, to me, one of the easiest ways to, my brain just stopped working. Okay, that's one of the easiest ways to sort of relate to other people. And I think that if you're going to attack a subject that can be very academic and that can be very sort of dry, the good way to do it is to any other way than that. So if that's telling a story from my own life, or if that's telling a story about, I don't know, one of my 3 sisters, which are also in the book, you know, that I think that's just a good way to connect. But the interludes, I think, I wouldn't necessarily treat them as like breaking the fourth wall, but they are just sort of, maybe they're guides to the rest of the chapters. They're guides to, there's sort of things to think about in context with the rest of the book, if that makes sense or is helpful.
And something you do really well is you have kind of just the right amount of presence in the book. Like, I am always constantly thinking about how present an author is in nonfiction, and I think something that you do really well here is it's not about you, but you are using yourself as kind of a guide. You're telling these stories that are illustrating a greater argument. You're not like making this argument as to turn back in on the self. It's kind of the reversal of that, which I really find interesting. And also just to talk a little bit about your language, because this book is funny. So I would actually, something Megan really loves is a very specific hypothetical.
That's true.
So for example, the line, the way that someone might occupy their time at work. Scrolling endless pages of the internet looking for shoes, Googling best plunger, broken toilet, or moderating a subreddit about guinea pigs are all acceptable uses of time on the company clock. How do you come up with these? And also, are they real?
That's a great question. So, don't tell your sister my boss.
Yeah, my sister is her boss.
That's true. So
I've seen her on Instagram during work hours.
Okay, thank you. So some of those, best plunger, broken toilet. I don't know who among us has not looked for that. Shoes, I am whatever. That's a normal thing to do. Work outside of work. No, the hypotheticals are. I think that is just how I speak normally, frankly, and also. Some are from real life and some are not, and I tried to pair one with the like a real one with a fake one, and that is a fun Easter egg for people who know me to figure out which one is true.
And people who don't know.
And people who don't know. I mean, listen, they could all be true. They could all be fake. This could all be a work of fiction. Who can say?
Yeah,
I mean, it's not. This is not fiction.
Yeah,
this is a real book.
I'm in defense of this word, but it's all fiction.
No, this is a true book. Yeah.
But you could have created the character Megan Reynolds, and she's the one who's guiding us through this.
I could have,
she's
but
not real at all.
Right, but unfortunately, here I am. Hello, I'm real, and also I am both the subject, sort of representative of the subject of the people who are told that you should stop saying like so much, and the other part is that I don't care about people telling me not to say things a certain way. So.
And you wrote a book about it.
And then I did that.
I have. Well, what are we supposed to go till 7? I don't know. How long are we supposed to go till? 7?
Yep.
Okay, great. So I'll ask one or so more questions,
Sure,
then
sure.
we'll open it up, and if people don't have questions, we'll just keep talking.
We'll just love to talk. Love to chat.
So you talk a little bit about professionalism,
passion
and
of
this
mine.
doesn't apply. We'll get this.
Are you? I don't know about those so. Okay. One of us will kill a
Sorry
at the end of this.
It's like really bothering
It
me.
is like really bothering me as well.
So this doesn't necessarily pertain to like itself, but like is relevant in how we talk. I'm curious, you talk a little bit about how professionalism or expectations of professionalism have changed in the COVID era, or post-COVID era, since so much has kind of moved to text-based communication. And I am curious about just your thoughts on professionalism in general, and also maybe, well, that's too broad. Professionalism broadly, but then also perhaps how expectations have changed in the COVID era. And this relates to because it relates to the way that I always think about how when I, to tell a little anecdote,
Yes,
if you don't
please.
mind.
No, please. floor is yours, ma'am.
My first job in publishing, I had two bosses. One was a woman and one was a man. And they were both fantastic.
Okay.
But the way that I wrote my emails to each of them was like two different
Drastically
people talking.
different,
Like
totally.
to the woman there were like 3 exclamation
Yeah.
points. To the guy there were none.
Right.
And because I was parroting the way that they communicated with
Gotcha,
me
I see, I
mostly.
see. Yeah.
And I think about that a lot because I think I've mostly streamlined my communication.
So, like,
and now I
a
have
solid,
a voice. I think I have a voice in
Emma,
how I write.
Yes,
Yeah.
good.
Though I do sometimes.
It's okay, it's
Mess it up. But yeah, I'm just curious about like how you think, especially written communication, has changed and how we kind of expect to be, what our expectations are for being professional and how maybe that language is policed or not.
I mean, I think that because since the pandemic, you know, when a lot of, I think, sort of like Slack jobs, like sort of texty, talky, emaily jobs, you can technically do those from anywhere, but those, I think we all sort of had to sort of recalibrate how we comported ourselves at work, because work was, for a long time, in the house, and everything else was in the house. So you're just in your house, and the lines obviously would become blurred because it's like I'm going from the freaking kitchen to the couch, and then now work is done, but I haven't left anywhere. I'm still in my freaking house, so why? I think I think everybody sort of had to like adjust a little bit to figure out what was proper and what was not, and I think that is, I mean, I'm sure we all remember the various sort of bad Zoom incidents in the early. Jeffrey Toobin did something unfortunate.
That was crazy.
Bad.
That was a crazy one.
Yeah, there's just a fair amount of sort of whoopsie daisies that no one should have been that no one would have made in the actual office that you were doing at home, because it's like I don't know when to close the computer when I'm going to go
I
do
don't know
something.
that I shouldn't be on a Zoom in the bathtub.
Right, like exactly. Like I should have pants on if people are going to see me, like literally from the computer. So I think we all had to sort of adjust what professionalism meant in regards to that. And I will say, to your point about talking to your man boss and your lady boss differently, I had to sort of look through the way that I spoke professionally at work, and I was not surprised to discover that it's basically the same that I'm speaking right now, probably a little less cursing and maybe just buttoned up just like a touch more. But I don't think I've never changed that to like model, to, you know, sort of model the person that I was speaking to. And I do think it's because prior to my current job, I worked somewhere that was slightly less quote unquote professional in many ways, just more casual. It's more casual. And now at work, now I'm doing stuff like emailing with architects and whatever else, and I am still sort of being that this is basically what you're gonna get if you're getting an email from me at work. It'll probably be a little, like I said, slightly more buttoned up, but I don't think that my delivery has necessarily diluted my message, because if I need to put on my sort of like corporate, you know, being stern drag, then I can do that very easily. And I think that hopefully maybe the fact that I do switch like that I would assume indicate that if I'm being serious, that I'm actually being serious, and like, please, like, hello, there's an issue here that I like addressed. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that comes with age, or it comes with, in that at least for me, as I've gotten older, have gotten more comfortable with it. But I also started in a place that was much more strict.
Yeah,
about, like,
totally.
And now I kind of do whatever I want.
Yeah, we love
so
that. Love to.
It makes it easier.
Free and easy.
Also, I've never had a Slack job, which I do feel like it. Do people know what Slack is? Yes. Okay. Sorry, that was a
good
foolish question for me, but I do think it's interesting because I still don't use Slack in my work life, but I feel like I know so many people whose entire work life is based around that, or Teams.
Do
And
you want to tell us what it is?
Oh yeah, sorry, I got a lot of nods, so I wasn't sure. Do you want to explain?
I would
Slack,
love to.
since you
Slack
know it
is
better?
basically, it's like, oh God, it's awful. No, it's like a messaging thing that we use to communicate at work. It's like if Instant Messenger, if AOL Instant Messenger was used in a professional capacity, that is basically what it is. It's like texting someone. It's like a really hideous combination of texting and email, and so many professional things happen within that space. So it feels, on the one hand, it is very much like, I am at work, I'm doing work things. On the other hand, you could be talking to one of your coworkers in a private message on Slack about 9 million other things that are not related to work. So it's a very sort of, it's a tool that they say is like good for productivity, and I don't know if that's true personally.
Because it also makes you.
Because it is like a time suck. Yeah.
Do other people have questions for Megan about the use of the word like,
Or any-
about her mom?
any-
Mom? I'm
Yes,
sorry, Anne.
Anne.
I mean you.
Anne/mom.
Sorry.
As the person who's being done for having criticized her daughter for using like when she was younger.
Yes.
But here's my question. So, it did become a thing. Like, I've never read the book, so it's just like, I mean, it may have been used all through history, but it seems like when my children were adolescents, it became a thing.
Yeah.
Is that just because
Oh, the
my
Valley.
children were adolescents, so I was more, I mean, it's like, I mean, well, I didn't use it when I was a kid.
Right.
So I'm just wondering if there's, why it became.
Like so
thing in the
pervasive?
pervasive in the culture.
I mean, it's, well, the Valley Girls, I think, were.
So it is, you actually do think it's from that?
I mean, I think the pervasiveness, that's, yeah, sure, that's the right word, that is because of the Valley Girls. So if you think about it, I was doing this math with Emma earlier at my house because I still, what did we say, 61? Okay, so a Valley Girl in 1982. 1982 is when Frank Zappa's song Valley Girl came out. So in 1982, let's assume a Valley Girl is between like 16 to 18. By now, that person would be like in their 60s?
Right.
Question? Yeah, okay. And so I think it's just, so that person who either was lambasted for saying it as a kid and then maybe rebelled against their parents and was like, you know what, I'm gonna say it all the time, whatever, then, they grew up and became a person who had a job and is maybe like the head of HR somewhere, and it is just part of their speech. And so I think that is how perhaps it trickled down to Kate and Emma.
And it was it was such a, and you have a really good chapter in the book about, it actually begins the book, right?
It does, yes.
Yeah, which feels like that's kind of that's the important historical moment,
That's
right?
the one that
I mean,
everybody that's the one that everybody associates it with. And I think but I do think it was like the largest, because the Valley Girl thing was, I was not born, but the Valley Girl thing, from what I've learned, did seem to be like a real big, people were like, what is that? Like, what is going on? Who are these aliens? Like, why are you talking like this? And I think maybe either the sort of inherent need to sort of rebel against your parents maybe like inculcated the word in their speech, and then here we are.
And there was a bit of a kind of monoculture of literally what Valley life was like,
Yes,
right?
yes.
You're literally in the San Fernando
Yeah,
Valley, which is
a vast.
right? Well,
Yes.
as a California woman. Other questions?
Yes, hello.
Hi, so it seems like the word is used more when people are speaking than in the written, when they're writing. Do you think that's true, and why do you think that?
I do think that is true, yes, and I think, well, it depends on like what you're writing, right? So, think about fiction. So there's some like dialogue in fiction. I think sometimes, depending on the book and obviously the writer, people will, you'll write it in to make the dialogue feel more real, but I think that's always a very, like, I've started noticing that now. And that to me always feels like a very calculated choice. But in other written communication, like texting, which I think is a sort of horrible hybrid of speaking and writing, I think most people generally text the way that they speak. So if you do say like a lot when you talk, like you will probably text it. Same with email. So I think, but I mean, write, like capital W writing, I guess, like in fiction or whatever else, I think if it does show up there, it's a like an artistic choice, like a decided choice.
It's interesting you mentioned that about dialogue, because we talk a lot about in dialogue in fiction how to make it real and how to make it mirror real life speech.
Which is really hard.
It is incredibly hard,
Yeah.
especially because you actually, in order to make it mirror real life speech, you also kind of have to make it not be real. It's this weird middle ground.
Writing dialogue is really hard, so I don't write fiction.
I used to make my students, for one of their assignments, I would make them literally go to and this is literally, I would make them do this, go to the library or like go anywhere and eavesdrop on a conversation and use that dialogue to write a story.
Oh, that's good.
And they all thought it was so creepy. They thought I was like, you're
Oh my
making
God,
me
whatever, you should be doing that anyway.
Surveillance
As a
state
writer, go
anyway.
away.
Yes.
Surveillance state.
Exactly.
Well, whether you're talking about writing or speaking, the bottom line is trying to communicate.
Yes.
And I'm not really sure I see how in any which way the word like, as I'm hearing it being used, is furthering any communication. For instance, I went with a friend to the hospital. She had a radiology test. When it was over, the doctor came out and said, well, you have to have like a biopsy. That was anecdotal. That wasn't real.
I would welcome that with open arms. I think, okay,
We won't please
Isn't that
everyone.
softening it, maybe?
it is kind of, yeah, I mean, I do think, again, if I were a doctor, would I come out and say you have to have like a biopsy? Possibly, depending on the day, probably not. I would probably try to maybe just, but it is soft, I mean, I think we could view it as sort of softening the blow, telling the person that they have to have a biopsy. I understand that maybe you just want to say you have to have a freaking biopsy.
No,
like-
there's radiation between those two ends. You can have compassion
Right.
and kindness and softness without.
No, totally.
It's just me. I may change my mind tomorrow.
Well, maybe when you read the
No,
book.
you totally can. No, I see your point, and it's true. And there was a woman I spoke to for the book who made the point that I spoke to her for the chapter about professionalism, and she made the point that like if you're confident in what you're saying, even if you are someone who says like a lot, if you are, that will probably you won't say it as much if you are confident in what you're saying and how you're saying it. And that'll be sort of also like an imperceptible calculation that you do in your brain. But I think the softening, it does soften, it gives a little hesitation to what you're about to say, like what's about to follow. And that's not necessarily because you don't know, you're like unsure of what you're gonna say. It's because you are probably just trying to give a little space between what you're, like the big, the big scary thing, which is the biopsy. But I do understand how that could sound insincere.
I also
which
think that if you were a doctor who in your, sorry,
No,
not
it's okay, no, I'm done.
I feel like if you were a doctor who in your personal life used like a lot,
Yeah.
you probably wouldn't say it like that.
No, because you'd be really aware of it.
Yeah.
Like if I were a doctor, which thank God I'm not, if I were a doctor, I think I would probably be aware of how I spoke normally as I am to all of you right now. And if I had to deliver news of that nature, I feel confident that I would not say you need like a biopsy.
And like you were speaking about before, you know when you have to put on your professionalism
yeah,
corporate
exactly.
cap, right?
Yeah, I
Which
know when I need to
is-
put on my little like
I
business
must have
suit.
missed this whole thing. My daughter's 50. I never heard either of us ever use like
Oh,
a lot of ums, but
Okay.
not alike.
Well,
well
might
then.
be your drink of choice.
And of course, then you talk about the 5 different forms to be using. So when did we get to, do you mean like? Is it?
Oh, yes, that I did not cover. I understand
Oh,
what you're
you
saying.
didn't talk about, like,
no,
It's a 6 use.
that's one of my favorite uses as well. I did cover it in the book, but I do think that is, let's see, can I spin it? Okay, yes, actually, coming with this off the fly. Saying like I like you, that is, you're distancing yourself, you're showing a big feeling, but you're like, I'm kind of scared of this big feeling, so I'm just gonna pad it with some bullshit to make it seem like this feeling is maybe smaller than it actually is.
It's also more concise than saying, I like you and I like you, but in kind of a romantic way. I would
Yeah.
like to go out with you. You can just
Exactly.
say, I like you.
Yeah, and then you can let the other person figure out what that means. And ideally they know.
So important.
Very important. It's passing the blame.
We love to pass
Stuck
that.
in the issue.
Exactly.
Yes,
We love-
exactly.
And that is, and listen, who among us has not done that? And I think that is a very useful thing to do when you need to.
Sometimes avoidance is important.
Listen, not all the time. Yes.
Well, I want to pick up on
hello.
what she was just saying because there are a lot of verbal, whether you want to call them tics, interjections, spacers, that when we were young, and I'm 30 years older than you,
Okay.
they were not in speech. And I'm not sure if there were other things that have since gone away. But there have been so many that have entered our speech,
Right.
including mine,
Yeah.
is in my lifetime. It was not there 65 years ago.
Yeah.
And with like, there's also, which you've used and I use, sort of, kind of.
Totally.
And I view that there may be something profound about that they are, with like, all softeners. But then there are others that are different. You know is interesting. I mean, which is more recent. I remember the first time I heard sort of, it was Katie Couric on the Today Show in the 1990s. It stood out to me because I'd never heard somebody use that in speech. I thought, well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And now most of us
Well,
use it.
language is in generally less formal now.
Yeah, I think that's what language is just generally less formal, I think. And stuff like I mean and sort of, those are all sort of hedges. I just did it. They're all hedges. It's just easier to, my brain again. What's going on? Actually, that's a great example because one of the arguments that I got from the WGN guy, was what's wrong with Norman. No, Norman was the reader.
Oh, sorry.
The man, I believe the anchor's name is Larry. He was like, what's wrong with silence? And I said, well, silence sounds worse than anything else, dude. It sounds like you literally forgot what you were fucking about to say. I have done it at least 3 times since we've been talking here. My brain is just shut down temporarily, and I've gone silent as if I, suffered some sort of incident, but I didn't. I just forgot what I was going to say. And so I think having anything to fill in that space is better than just silence. Because no one knows what to do with silence. Like our natural impulse is to fill it with something, whatever that may be.
So true. Just as I'm about to pick up this conversation, so there's no silence.
Thank you, Emma.
I also think English, it's interesting because, you do have the section where you talk about a word in Mandarin that is sort of, I think, a little similar to right? It's more of a filler.
Dad, are you going to say something? Do you want to help me? Do you know the word?
Yeah, I know the word.
Okay, don't say it because it sounds racist.
Yeah,
but
it
it's not.
unfortunately sounds like a slur, but it isn't.
It's not.
Thank you, I know. But I mean, to Emma's question?
Yeah,
Do you have a thought?
what is it equivalent to?
You're just sort of pausing.
It's like
Yeah, it's a filler.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, or it's like this.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's like this thing, this thing.
Isn't there one in French too? Like
Probably.
I can't.
I'll tell you, Laura.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Something like
it's
that.
just like, you say it to fill space, you say it to sort of move the conversation along. The conversation, if you're not saying that word, the conversation would probably stop a little bit, and then the person would be like, what are you doing? What's happening? Are we still talking here? And so it just moves things along, and it's nice. Yes.
I know I say a lot of stupid shit, but I'm just trying to fill in.
Same.
So I'm trying to learn to deal with the silence, because otherwise I'm going to say like that.
I mean, I think, you know what, again, as I've said, as long as you're not saying anything racist, bad, then you're good.
And also, we have a word for the way that we all love to talk now, which is yapping.
That's true.
We all love to yap, and we
That's
talk
true.
about it all the time.
That's true.
So people love to fill silences.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's I think it's a human impulse to want to fill the silence, because silence means that you have either, again, your brain has stopped working, or you don't know what to say next. And that, it's okay to not know what to say next, but it's sometimes a little nicer to let your conversational partner know that you are still thinking about what you're going to say next. And so if there's a word or a phrase or a something that can sort of do that, then, that's just, I think that's just facilitating good communication between you and someone else. And also it means that the other person knows maybe not to cut you off, or to not interrupt, or to say, okay, she's figuring it out still. So I will hold my tongue until I hear the natural end of a sentence.
But yapping has a connotation to it. It's one of those little dogs that doesn't shut up.
I mean, that's certainly...
Yeah, but we've kind of reclaimed it.
Thank you.
Wouldn't you
Yes,
say?
I would say.
We love to yap. You sometimes have to reclaim language.
That's true.
In order to
That's true.
own it.
I mean, I can talk about the C word, but I'm not going to do
We're
that
not
right now.
going to do that.
Not today.
Not tonight. Not at all. Rhyme bag.
No.
That's for your second book.
Okay, let's...
I think we are done.
I think we are done.
We're about done.
Very good.